BlackRock, the world's largest asset manager, is making a $2 trillion move right now that will reshape the entire global economy. And I'm not talking about speculation or theories. This is actually happening as we speak. The smartest money on the planet is positioning itself for something massive. And if you're not paying attention, you're about to be left behind while the wealthy get even richer. Stay with me, because by the end of this video, you'll understand exactly what BlackRock knows that you don't, and more importantly, how you can position yourself before it's too late. Welcome to George Vance Live, where we expose the financial moves that the elite don't want you to understand. If this is your first time here, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications right now, because this channel is your insider access to the strategies that the top 1% use to build generational wealth. Let me start by making sure you understand who BlackRock actually is, because most people have no idea just how powerful this company has become. BlackRock manages over $10 trillion in assets. To put that in perspective, that's more than the GDP of every country on Earth except the United States and China. They're bigger than most nations. They have more financial power than entire continents. When BlackRock moves, global markets move. When BlackRock makes a strategic shift, it's not just an investment decision. It's a reshaping of the economic landscape. Larry Fink, the CEO of BlackRock, doesn't just manage money. He advises presidents. He counsels central banks. He has direct access to the most powerful people in finance and government around the world. When he speaks, Treasury secretaries listen. When BlackRock publishes research, it influences Federal Reserve policy. This isn't a normal investment company. This is a shadow power that operates at the intersection of finance and government. And right now, they're making the biggest move in their history. So what exactly is this $2 trillion move? BlackRock is orchestrating a massive shift out of traditional assets and into what they're calling the infrastructure and real asset revolution. We're talking about a fundamental reallocation of capital on a scale we've never seen before. They're moving money out of overvalued tech stocks, out of bonds that are getting crushed by inflation, out of commercial real estate that's collapsing, and into hard assets that will dominate the next economic era. Energy infrastructure, water rights, agricultural land, data centers, renewable energy, mineral deposits, transportation networks, the physical backbone of civilization. Now, why would BlackRock be doing this right now? Let me connect the dots for you, because this is where it gets really interesting. BlackRock has access to data and analysis that ordinary investors will never see. They have thousands of analysts. They have proprietary AI systems processing millions of data points. They have relationships with every major government and central bank. They can see economic trends forming before they hit the headlines. And everything they're seeing is telling them the same thing. The financial system as we know it is about to go through a massive transformation. And the assets that made people rich over the past 40 years are not the assets that will make people rich over the next 40 years. Think about it. For the past 4 decades, the winning strategy was simple. Buy stocks and bonds, ride the bull market, benefit from falling interest rates and globalization. But that era is over. Interest rates have bottomed and are rising. Globalization is reversing into regionalization and protectionism. The easy money from central banks is ending. Stock valuations are stretched to historic extremes. The traditional 60-40 portfolio of stocks and bonds, it's dying. BlackRock knows this, and they're getting ahead of it. The $2 trillion move is happening across multiple fronts, and I want to break each one down for you so you can see the full picture. First, energy infrastructure. BlackRock has been pouring billions into energy assets, but not the kind you might think. Yes, they're investing in renewable energy like solar and wind farms, but they're also heavily into natural gas infrastructure, pipelines, storage facilities, and even coal assets in certain markets. Why? Because they understand something that politicians won't admit. The energy transition is going to take decades, not years, and during that transition, traditional energy infrastructure is going to be incredibly valuable. The world needs more energy, not less. Developing countries are industrializing. AI and data centers are consuming massive amounts of electricity. Electric vehicles need power generation. You can't just shut down fossil fuels and replace them with renewables overnight. The physics and economics don't work. So BlackRock is buying the infrastructure that will be essential regardless of which energy sources win. They're positioning to profit from the transition itself, not betting on one side or the other. That's brilliant strategy. Second, water rights and infrastructure. This is something most people aren't even thinking about. But BlackRock is buying up water rights across the American West and investing heavily in water treatment and distribution infrastructure globally. Why? Because water scarcity is going to be one of the defining issues of the next 50 years. Climate change, population growth, and agricultural demands are creating water stress in regions around the world. Whoever controls water infrastructure is going to have incredible pricing power. It's literally a monopoly on life's most essential resource. BlackRock sees this, and they're positioning now while most investors are completely unaware. Third, agricultural land and food production infrastructure. BlackRock, along with other major institutions, has been quietly accumulating farmland, particularly in the United States. Bill Gates is now the largest private farmland owner in America, and BlackRock is right there with him through various funds and holdings. Why farmland? Because you can print money, but you can't print food. As global population grows and climate change affects traditional growing regions, productive agricultural land becomes one of the most valuable assets on Earth. Plus, farmland is a perfect inflation hedge. Food prices go up, land values go up, farm income goes up. It's a triple win in an inflationary environment. Fourth, data centers and digital infrastructure. BlackRock is investing billions into the physical infrastructure of the digital economy. Server farms, fiber optic networks, cell towers, satellite systems, everything that makes the modern digital world function. This is genius because regardless of what happens in financial markets, the digitalization of the economy continues. AI needs computing power. Cloud services need data centers. Remote work needs connectivity. These are essential utilities of the 21st century, and BlackRock is buying them up. Fifth, critical minerals and mining operations. This is a big one that directly ties to the energy transition. Electric vehicles need lithium, cobalt, nickel, and rare earth elements. Solar panels need silver and copper. Wind turbines need rare earth magnets. The renewable energy revolution requires massive amounts of these minerals, and BlackRock is investing in mines and processing facilities around the world. They're creating a choke point in the supply chain for the very technologies that governments are mandating. It's a guaranteed profit center for decades. Now let me tell you what this means for you, because this isn't just about BlackRock getting richer. This is about a fundamental shift in how wealth is created and preserved. If you have your money sitting in traditional investments and you're not adapting to this shift, you're going to get left behind. The wealth gap is going to explode even wider. Because the people who understand this trend will multiply their wealth, while everyone else sees their purchasing power erode. Here's the key insight. BlackRock isn't making this move because they think these assets will go up a little bit. They're making this move because they believe we're entering a period of currency devaluation, inflation, and potential financial system instability where hard assets with real utility will massively outperform financial assets. They're preparing for a world where owning physical infrastructure is more valuable than owning stocks in companies that depend on a stable financial system. Think about what happens in a high inflation environment. Your cash loses value. Bonds pay interest that doesn't keep up with inflation, so you lose purchasing power. Stocks can be volatile because higher interest rates compress valuations. But real assets? A water treatment plant still generates cash flow. A farm still produces food that sells for higher prices. An energy pipeline still collects fees. Data centers still get paid for computing power. These assets have pricing power in inflation. They generate real returns in real terms, not just nominal returns that get eaten by currency devaluation. BlackRock is also betting on something even bigger: the decoupling of the US from China and the reshoring of supply chains. For 40 years, globalization meant moving production to wherever labor was cheapest. Factories went to China, supply chains stretched around the world. But geopolitical tensions, the pandemic, and national security concerns are reversing this trend. Countries want resilient domestic supply chains. That means building factories, warehouses, transportation networks, and energy infrastructure in America and allied countries. It's a multi-trillion-dollar infrastructure build-out, and BlackRock is positioning to finance and own large pieces of it. There's also a demographic component to this strategy that's absolutely critical. The baby boomer generation, the wealthiest generation in history, is aging. Over the next 20 years, there's going to be the largest wealth transfer in human history as boomers pass away and leave their assets to younger generations. BlackRock is betting that the next generation will value different things. They'll want sustainable infrastructure. They'll want assets that address climate change and resource scarcity. BlackRock is building a portfolio that aligns with where they believe capital allocation is heading as values shift. But here's what really should concern you. BlackRock isn't just buying these assets as passive investments. They're gaining control over essential infrastructure that everyone depends on. When one entity controls the water system, the energy grid, the food supply, and the digital backbone, they have extraordinary power. They can influence prices. They can influence policy because governments need them. This is about consolidating power, not just making investment returns. And most people have no idea it's happening because it's done through complex corporate structures and funds that ordinary people can access. Let me paint you a picture of what the world looks like if this trend continues. 10 years from now, BlackRock and a handful of other mega asset managers own or control most of the critical infrastructure in America. You pay rent to a BlackRock-owned landlord. Your electricity comes from a BlackRock-owned grid. Your water comes from a BlackRock-owned utility. Your food is grown on BlackRock-owned farmland. Your internet runs through BlackRock-owned data centers. You don't own any of these assets. You just pay to use them, and the fees keep going up because you have no choice. You need these things to survive. This is the future they're building, and it's already happening. Look at what's happened with single-family homes. Major institutions, including BlackRock, bought up hundreds of thousands of houses after the 2008 crash. They turned an entire generation into renters instead of owners. Home ownership rates dropped, rents increased, wealth concentration accelerated. Now they're doing the same thing with every other essential asset class. Infrastructure, energy, water, food production, digital systems. They're turning the ownership economy into a rental economy where ordinary people own nothing and rent everything from the mega wealthy. So what can you do about this? How do you position yourself to benefit from this trend instead of being a victim of it? First, understand that you need to think like BlackRock, just on a smaller scale. You need to shift from financial assets to real assets where possible. If you can afford to buy real estate, do it. Not just a house to live in, but rental properties, or land that generates income or appreciates with inflation. Real estate with essential utilities like water or mineral rights is even better. Second, invest in commodity producers and infrastructure companies. You might not be able to buy a farm or a pipeline directly, but you can own stock in companies that own these assets. Look for companies with real pricing power in essential industries. Utilities, energy infrastructure, agricultural equipment, mining companies, water utilities. These are the sectors where BlackRock is deploying capital, and you can follow their lead through publicly traded companies. Third, consider commodity exposure directly. Gold and silver have been money for thousands of years, and they're coming back as inflation hedges. Agricultural commodities, energy commodities, industrial metals, these all tend to do well when currencies are being debased and when there's concern about supply chains. You can get exposure through ETFs, futures, or in some cases, physical ownership. The key is diversifying away from pure paper assets. Fourth, think about skills and capabilities that have value in this new economy. If the world is shifting toward infrastructure, energy, and food production, having expertise in these areas makes you valuable. Engineering, agricultural science, energy sector knowledge, water management. These aren't just jobs. These are skills that give you optionality and earning power in the economy that's being built. Financial engineering and paper-pushing jobs might become less valuable, but people who understand physical systems and real production will be in demand. Fifth, be very careful about debt. In a world of real asset appreciation and currency devaluation, the right kind of debt can be good. A fixed-rate mortgage on productive real estate is excellent because you're paying back with devalued currency while the asset appreciates. But variable rate debt or debt used for consumption is a trap. If interest rates spike or if your income doesn't keep up with inflation, debt can destroy you. Be strategic about leverage. Now let me tell you about the timeline, because people always want to know when this shift is going to become obvious. The truth is, it's already happening. BlackRock has been executing this strategy for several years now, but the acceleration is happening right now, the $2 trillion figure I mentioned. That's the capital being deployed over the next 2 to 3 years, according to their public statements and investor presentations. We're in the middle of it. You're going to see more headlines about infrastructure investment, about water scarcity, about energy transitions, about supply chain reshoring. Each headline is evidence of this mega trend unfolding. But by the time the mainstream catches on and ordinary investors start piling in, the best opportunities will be gone. BlackRock and the smart money will have already locked up the premium assets. This is your window to position yourself before the crowd realizes what's happening. There are also geopolitical implications to this move that you need to understand. When American asset managers control critical infrastructure globally, that gives the United States tremendous economic leverage. If there's a conflict with China, the fact that American companies control key supply chains, energy infrastructure, and digital networks around the world becomes a strategic asset. This isn't just business, this is economic statecraft. BlackRock is working hand in glove with the US government to maintain American economic dominance in a multipolar world. But there's a darker scenario to consider. What if this concentration of asset ownership leads to a new kind of feudalism? In medieval times, a few nobles owned all the land, and everyone else were serfs who worked that land for the benefit of the owners. We thought we'd move past that with democracy and capitalism creating a property-owning middle class. But if trends continue, we could end up in a neo-feudal system where a tiny elite owns all the essential assets and infrastructure, and everyone else is essentially a renter or contractor with no real ownership or economic power. This isn't conspiracy theory. This is just extrapolating current trends. Wealth concentration is already at historic levels. The top 1% owns more wealth than the bottom 90%. If that trend continues and accelerates as hard assets appreciate and financial assets struggle, you end up with a two-tier society. Those who own productive assets and infrastructure live in abundance. Those who only have their labor to sell struggle to afford the basics because they're renting everything from the ownership class. This is the future we're sliding toward unless something changes. I'm not saying this to depress you. I'm saying this to wake you up. The game is changing and you need to change your strategy. The traditional advice of work hard, save money, invest in a diversified portfolio of stocks and bonds, that might not work anymore. You need to think differently. You need to acquire real assets and skills that have value in this new paradigm. You need to stop thinking like an employee or a passive investor and start thinking like an owner of productive capital. Here's my challenge to you. Take action this week, not next month. Not when you have more time. This week. Research one infrastructure or real asset investment you can make. Maybe it's buying stock in a utility company. Maybe it's looking at farmland rates. Maybe it's opening a commodities trading account. Maybe it's just educating yourself about these sectors so you understand them better. But do something concrete that moves you in the direction of real asset ownership. And please, share this video with everyone you know. Most people have no idea that this massive shift is happening. They're going about their lives while the economic foundation is being restructured under their feet. Your friends and family deserve to know. They deserve the chance to position themselves before it's too late. Send them this video. Post it on your social media. Start conversations about what's happening. Knowledge is power, but only if it's shared and acted upon. Subscribe to George Vance Live right now if you haven't already. Smash that notification bell. We're going to continue following this story as it develops, tracking where BlackRock and other major players are deploying capital, and giving you actionable intelligence to protect and grow your wealth. This is the most important economic story of our time. And you won't get this analysis from mainstream financial media because they're either part of the system or too compromised to tell you the truth. Leave a comment below telling me what you think. Do you see this shift happening? Are you already investing in real assets? What's your strategy for the next 5 years? I want to hear from you because we're building a community of people who understand what's really happening and are taking control of their financial futures, instead of being passive victims of economic trends. BlackRock's $2 trillion move is not just about them getting richer, though they absolutely will. It's a signal. It's the smart money telling you where the world is heading. They're betting on a future of resource scarcity, infrastructure dominance, and the ownership of essential systems. You can either recognize that signal and position yourself accordingly, or you can ignore it and wonder in 10 years why you're struggling while the wealthy have pulled even further ahead. The choice is yours, but the window is closing. Every day that passes, more of these assets get locked up by institutional investors with deep pockets. Every month that goes by, prices for the remaining opportunities increase. The time to act is now, while you still can. Don't be the person who looks back 5 years from now and says, "I saw this coming, but I didn't do anything about it." Be the person who took action and positioned themselves for the new economy that's being built. This is George Vance Live, giving you the financial intelligence you need to thrive in a world that's changing faster than most people realize. Stay informed, stay ahead of the curve, and most importantly, take action. Your future self will thank you for what you do today. Until next time, own assets, build skills, and never stop learning about where the smart money is moving. The revolution is happening now, and you have a choice to make about which side of it you want to be on.